Today on Lockdown Red Wings, they complete the comeback, beating the Pittsburgh Penguins 5-4 in overtime. Jake Walman gets the game winner and hits the griddy in the process.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Lockdown Red Wings podcast. I am your host, Brian Fisher. I'm a podcast producer for the Daily J, WWJ News Radio podcast. Scotty is out today. He is out of town. He's down south visiting family. And today was originally a scheduled day off for us. I was also going to be out of town, but then I got sick. And I got really sick on Tuesday, which is why we didn't record. I'm a lot better today, good enough to go. I probably still sound pretty sick, and you might see me mute the mic a couple times to cough a little bit, but nothing was going to stop me from recording after that heck of a comeback, a 5-4 victory after the Red Wings were down 4-0 at the end of the first period, 4-0 on 12 shots. Just going into the second period, I was confident. I would not say this was a great game, but it was a great game. The Red Wings had 46 shots to end the game on Casey DeSmith. And man, he laid it all out there. To give credit where credit's due, before I get into how I thought the Red Wings really recouped after an abysmal first period, I want to give Casey DeSmith credit because he laid it all out there. He made 41 saves in this game. And yeah, his save percentage is going to show .891. But if you're a goaltender and you make 40-plus saves, that's not a failure on your part. That's a failure on your defense's part. That's a failure on your team's part. They did not back him up after a fantastic first. They let their foot off the gas pedal and just let the Red Wings walk all over them. And, credit to the Red Wings as well as they regrouped. But, man, Casey DeSmith was great in this game. But on that note, before I get into the actual game itself, news and notes that I would have gotten to yesterday if we had recorded. Jacob Vrana, 3-game AHL stint with the Grand Rapids Griffins. Game 1 is happening as we are talking. It might be about wrapping up. As far as I know, they are down 3-1, and he doesn't have a point in this game. The best thing he's done so far is, or the most notable thing, I won't say the best thing, but the most notable thing he's done so far is draw a penalty on a nice head fake play. Lack of production does not mean lack of, making things happen, though. It's his first game back, first professional game back since October. So as much as I would love to see him tear it up in the AHL, let's temper those expectations a little bit. I know I tweeted about it like, oh, he's going to tear it up, but let's be honest with ourselves. It might take him a little bit longer to get back in the swing of things. And then also, we're still doing the Kubalik stick giveaway that ends on Sunday. So it's Twitter only. So just go to our Twitter, follow Scotty and I and the podcast, and just retweet it, and you'll be entered to win. And then we'll announce that winner probably it'll be on Monday's episode. So it'll be the 2nd. So New Year's, the day after New Year's will be when it gets announced. But yes, the Red Wings bounced back. They had a week off, and going into that first period, coming out of that first period, I should say, I was pretty down bad on how this team was performing. And, there's a big argument to be made here. They won their game, 7-4 against Tampa last Wednesday, snapping their 6-game losing streak. And, momentum was looking to finally go on their side. That was a good win against a really good Tampa Bay team. And they showed up when the team needed a win for sure. And that game on Friday got canceled because of the snow. Now, there are two schools of thought that occur here. One is, okay, good. They'll be able to get well rested for the game next Wednesday and heal up. The other one is okay, well, any momentum they're going to have is going to be gone. And one thing I tend to notice is the narrative is whatever it fits at that time. And that's just something that Scotty and I always say is if it fits your narrative. And going into this, I thought for sure it would be Red Wings are down 4-0. They lost their momentum, but the counter argument could have been, well, they should be more rested. Pittsburgh, to their credit, well, I don't know if this is to their credit, but they have played a game already. I think they played the night before, and they got shelled. So they came out in the first period with a chip on their shoulder, and the Red Wings looked like a team that hadn't played in a week. Now, well rested, second and third period would say they probably were. Pittsburgh, could have been fatigued because they played the night before and then put it all out there in the first period because they were angry. regardless, the Pittsburgh Penguins heavily outplayed the Detroit Red Wings in the first period, and you cannot rely on a 5-goal comeback in 45 minutes to win hockey games. And this is something we've discussed time and time again. This is not a recipe for elongated success in the NHL, but I will not complain, especially with how abysmal that first period was with the history that has happened. Last year, they scored 11 goals on the Detroit Red Wings, if I'm recalling correctly off the top of my head, in Pittsburgh. So this is the first game in Pittsburgh since they shelled the Red Wings and put 11 goals on them. And it looked early like it was going to be that way again. I think I tweeted out at the first period, don't worry, guys, they're only going to get outscored 12-0 at this rate. And they turned it around. And, part of the reason is, and I hate to say this, and, I don't know if this is for sure the reason. I think that a big part of the reason also is that they just, finally knocked the dust off and the rust off after that first period and came out ready in the second. But, Husso didn't necessarily look his sharpest either. It was a complete team rust. I mean, in the defensive zone in that first period, they looked horrible, just absolutely horrible. Defensive breakdowns led to at least the 3 of those goals against Phil Peronic, defensive breakdown, Jake Wallman, defensive breakdown, Ben Sherratt, defensive breakdowns all across the board. And it wasn't just the defense. Obviously, the offense wasn't in position to pick up the late guy. They weren't on the half walls winning the battles. In the defensive zone, they just looked lost in the first period. And that's something that we've seen time and time again. And again, the Red Wings allowed a goal in the first 5 minutes of the game. And that was the one goal. They scored a goal on their first shot. And these are the trends that we have seen out of this Red Wings team, is looking lost in the defensive zone, goals with less than 5 minutes into the game, goals on like the first 2 or 3 shots in the game. Things like that are things that have been recurring problems that the Red Wings have had all season long. But how they responded is what is really important in this game. And they responded very, very well in that the second and third period was night and day compared to the first. And when we get into the second segment, I'm going to flash up the win probability chart that Evolving Hockey has, because it's honestly pretty hilarious that even up until the Red Wings scored that game-tying goal, the probability was like here, and then it dropped all the way to the Red Wings side of the chart after that game-tying goal, because it was such an improbable comeback that they had. And I'm not going to I'm going to wrap up my ramblings on the first period, because that's not what we're here to talk about. My thoughts on the first period is the team can't play flat in any single period. Malone has said it. You have to play a perfect 60 minutes if you want to win hockey games. And, they got away with not having to do that in this game. They played a perfect 45 minutes after an abysmal first 20. But that comeback is really what we should be focusing on. That comeback that the Red Wings had after the first 20 is really where they shined. And, of course, it starts with the change in net. Magnus Hellberg came in, and he looked great in this game. He was significantly less challenged than Husso was in the second and third period than Husso was in the first. Husso faced 12 shots in the first, while Magnus Hellberg faced just 19 in the second, third, and overtime combined. But that's partially because the team played a lot better. But, credit to where credit is due. Magnus Hellberg, in his 45 minutes of time on the ice, played really, really well. Obviously, like I said, he made 19 saves on 19 shots, but he had a goal saved above expected of 2.01. So even if you take out the fact that, he only played 45 minutes and only faced 19 shots against, he still saved an expected 2 goals against. And that's a credit to how well he came in this game and backed up the team. And I think a little bit of the goaltender change may have sparked the team, whether or not you believe in that. That's a common philosophy in the NHL and in hockey culture, is that the change of the goaltender is meant to light a spark under the team that you're not doing enough. It's not necessarily a slight on the goaltender, but a slight on the team for not supporting him and just kind of throwing the goaltender, obviously, a life preserver before he drowns. But, Magnus Hellberg came in and he locked it down. A 2.01 expected goals against in this game. He looked solid. And then, when we get into segment 2, I'll break down the rest of the game, but power play goals, extended zone pressure, things that we talk about are what led you on this comeback. And of course, just shots. It's crazy. So when we come back, we'll talk about that and more. But first, I got to talk to you guys about driving sober. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. You can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds you get pulled over anyways? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job. You total your car? You kill someone? Everyone knows that the risks of driving drunk, the results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel and under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on the roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. We're talking about the 5-4 comeback victory the Red Wings had over the Pittsburgh Penguins. And we talked about a little bit in segment 2 that, obviously Magnus Hellberg was a huge part of that, coming in relief of Ville Husso, making 19 of 19 saves, goals saved above expected of 2.01. Great performance by him. He's the presumed starter in tomorrow's second half of this back-to-back. But let's talk a little bit about what led to your success in this comeback outside of the goaltending, outside of the crease. And the first thing that pops in front of my face is obviously shot totals. Shot totals in this game, 46 shots on net. Anytime you shoot the puck on net, 46 times in a single game, you're more than likely going to win that game. And regardless, I was still shocked that you won this game just because you were down 4-0 to begin with. That's a steep hole to put yourself in. But more often than not, you're going to win that game, and you did in this case. And it's not just the 46 shots, but also you were doing in set periods 2 and 3 what Pittsburgh was doing in period 1, which was taking advantage of turnovers, taking advantage of defensive collapses, and just being there for the rebound. I mean, if you look at David Perron's game-tying goal, you look at Jonathan Berggren's goal, you look at Dylan Larkin's goal, just came from being at the net with your stick on the ice and being ready. That's how you score goals in the National Hockey League, guys. It's that simple. And then, of course, the one other goal was scored by, who guessed it, Joe Veleno, who's been on a little bit of a heater here. And God, that's a conversation we got to have too, is Verano right around the corner, Fabry presumably around the corner as well. You got 3 guys who are waiver exempt, and all 3 guys are playing like bona fide NHL, or at least 2 of the 3. Soderblom, yes and no at times, it depends, but it's going to be really tough to see who they call down. Excuse me 1 second as I cough. So it's going to be really interesting to see, but we're not going to talk about that right at this instance. Joe Veleno's goal came off sustained zone pressure. And that is something that we as Red Wings fans, and Scotty and I in particular, have been talking about for a long time, that the Red Wings have got to do better if they want to score at 5-on-5 and score at 5-on-5 more consistently. The Red Wings have a habit of scoring a lot of the time off the rush. Jonathan Berggren's goal, in fact, was scored off a sustained zone pressure. Get in the offensive zone, set up, cycle. And that is exactly, I remember seeing a graphic after the first period, after Pittsburgh was up 4-0. And Bally Sports Detroit, John Keating, pointed it out. Zone cycles. That was what Pittsburgh was killing the Red Wings at. The Red Wings are killing Pittsburgh in every single statistic, including faceoffs, which Red Wings have not done a whole lot this season. But zone cycles, Pittsburgh was doing a magnificent job at. And the Red Wings came out in periods 2 and 3 and dominated that facet of it. They got in the offensive zone. They established pressure, didn't just score, shoot the puck, not get the rebound, and then have to break back out again because the Pittsburgh Penguins are coming back the other way. They sustained zone pressure. Ben Sherratt, was able to keep that puck in the offensive zone on Joe Veleno's. But, prior to that, they were cycling the puck, making passes happen, shooting the puck. Joe Veleno was able to take I think it was a Ben Sherratt intentional pass out in front and redirect it. It was a great look by Ben Sherratt. But that goal doesn't happen if the team doesn't establish zone presence. The same thing on Jonathan Berggren's goal. It was a little bit of a lucky bounce off of, I believe, Elmer Soderblom. It technically is unassisted here. I don't know if ESPN is 100% accurate, but I believe it came off Elmer Soderblom's skate to Joe Veleno. It was kind of a lucky bounce. But again, sustained zone pressure, net front presence led to a goal. And that's how you score consistently at 5-on-5 in the National Hockey League, is zone pressure. You can't just skate in the zone, shoot the puck, and expect to score every single time. It's great that you can do that. It's still a phenomenal thing to have, but it should be supplemental to sustained possession. Sustained possession is how you win hockey games, and that was 2 of their 5 goals in this game. The other 2, power play goals. That's something else we've been hammering home as special teams. Again, supplemental. 5-on-5 presence is where you need to thrive if you want to win. But It's great supplemental ways to winning hockey. And the Red Wings had 2 power play goals in this game against a Pittsburgh Penguins team that hadn't allowed a goal in like 4 games or something. I can't remember what they said on the air, but it was like 4 games or something like that. The Pittsburgh Penguins hadn't allowed a power play goal against, and they allowed 2 in this game. Dylan Larkins was a little bit of a flutter, a little bit of luck. Raymond and Hronik got the assists on that one. David Perron's later, he was in his spot. He was in the left dot. That's his office. I mean, I don't know if I can actually call it his office because it's Ovi's office, but David Perron makes a living there as well, a discounted living compared to Ovechkin, but a living nonetheless. And he was ready for the rebound. It came right to him, and he buried it for the game-tying goal with less than 5 minutes left to play in regulation. So those things combined led to, a great comeback. And then, of course, going into overtime, I thought Andrew Kopp was going to bury that. I can't believe Andrew Kopp hit the post. You want to talk about a forward who is snake bitten? It's Andrew Kopp. He has been consistently putting himself in a position to succeed offensively and just can't find a way to bury the puck. I think he has, 2, maybe 3 goals on the season so far. I know he's starting to get some apples. Obviously, he got the apple on Jake Wallman's overtime winner. But for them to come back down the ice the other way, Magnus Hellberg just stones them, and then come back the other way, and Andrew Kopp feeds him a beautiful, all Wallman had to do was redirect it. He didn't even shoot that puck. A beautiful feed, and a great job by Wallman to sneak past the defenders, put on the afterburners, get behind the defenders. So all he had to do was redirect it. A great feed by Wallman, or a great feed by Kopp, great awareness by Wallman, and a great redirection. And he finishes it off by doing nothing else but the griddy. And I can't believe I saw that on national television or local television, but I can't believe I watched that on television. Is a National Hockey League player celebrate his goal, his game-winning goal, by doing the griddy. And, Jake Wallman continues to be one of those players that just, again, I talk about it. He goes, oh no, oh great, oh no, oh yes. Like, he's such a flashy player, and it comes in moments, and he had a couple moments early in the game that had me, shaking my head, but he made up for it, man. That overtime winner, and great call by Lalona put him out there because he has the offensive upside. So if you want a defenseman out there who's going to try and win you hockey games, Jake Wallman's a great candidate. Him and Hronik both are great overtime candidates to try and win you a hockey game. So, I'm happy for Wallman getting the opportunity, and he's definitely played well enough lately to get that. Look at some more of the advanced numbers in this game. Dylan Larkin, Michael Rasmussen, and David Perron's expected goals for percentage in this game, 85.20%. Their top line in 12:46 of 5-on-5 play had an expected goals for of 9.96 and expected goals against of 0.17. That's how dominant your first line was in this game. That's incredible considering that they're playing against a first line, against not even a first line. Let's take that out of it. You're playing against a team that has Malkin, Crosby, Letang, and Brian Rust on it. All 4 of those guys are phenomenal players. And I would take any one of those players on the Red Wings in a heartbeat. And the Red Wings dominated those players. Malkin and Crosby didn't have a single point in this game. How often as Red Wings fans, we've been able to say that? Crosby and Malkin, 2 instantaneous Hall of Famers. Maybe Letang too, probably Letang. Not a single point in this game. I mean, that's great to see. That is absolutely great to see. You talk individuals that absolutely shine. Obviously, Larkin, Rasmussen. Again, Rasmussen continuing to prove his redemption arc has been great. Whether it's at center, whether it's at wing, whatever he's doing, he has been playing phenomenal this year, and he's playing top-line minutes with Dylan Larkin, and his chemistry with Larkin has really shown. His hands have improved massively. His skating, I will scream it to the moon. His skating has improved so much since years prior. Michael Rasmussen was second on the team with an expected goals for of 85.78 and a Corsi for of 55. Corsi was a lot closer across all metrics for both teams. The highest Corsi for in this game obviously went to Dylan Larkin at 58, but expected goals for weights those shot attempts for quality, and that's where you get the 85%. Obviously, big part of that is Larkin actually had a goal in the game, which is why his was 85%. But Michael Rasmussen and David Perron also had an expected goals for of 1.3 and 1.32. Rasmussen didn't have a goal in this game. So that first line played great. Phil Peronic had an expected goals for of 1.56, a goal and a half. Ben Sherratt had an expected goals for of 1.61. Michael Rasmussen's expected goals for, his is so high because he missed that cross crease attempt. I guarantee you that's why his is so high, but without a single goal against. I'm curious why Ben Sherratt's is so high. I'm curious what shot he took. I can't remember off the top of my head that would have qualified him for that high of an expected goals for percentage. But, at the end of the game, there's only a handful of Red Wings that put up poor numbers on the expected goals for percentage. Not that that's the end all be all. I mean, first period, for instance, the Red Wings outshot the Pittsburgh Penguins, but it sure didn't look like it on the score sheet as the Pittsburgh Penguins heavily outplayed them. Sometimes the eye test is a better litmus test for how well the team's playing than the statistics. But, only a handful of these players statistically had bad games. Pius Suter, man, an expected goals for relative of negative 46.27. His whole line was really underwhelming in this game. Oskar Sundqvist had a really bad turnover late in the third period to the middle of the defensive zone that almost caused a goal, and sustained pressure in the defensive zone had the Red Wings on their heels right after they had tied it up. That made me really nervous. That line probably was really, really weak, but the rest of the lines looked pretty solid. That fourth line of Veleno, Bergeron, and Soderblom continues to produce. Those young guys continue to produce, and lines 1 and 2 looked pretty solid. So, outside of that first period, guys, I have nothing but good things. I know I got to go to break again, but I teased this evolving hockey probability chart. So I will pull it up and show you guys what I'm talking about here. But look at this probability chart that the Red Wings have. It was at one point 99%, at two different points. It was 99% for certain the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to win this hockey game. And then the Red Wings, you can see it right here. They score the tying goal, and then it drops all the way down to here that the Red Wings are probably going to win. That's borderline 0%. I'm sorry. This is after the third period ends. I'm a doofus. This is where it is at the end of the third period. It's still on the Pittsburgh Penguins side, just barely, but then obviously it dips all the way down. So to see it go from 99% to 0% in the course of, honestly, 5 minutes of game time here, from probably about 10 minutes from halfway through the third period towards the end of overtime, is incredible, and just really is a great visual to show you how much of an improbable comeback that was. And in fact, I think the Red Wings tweeted it out, or the NHL tweeted it out, that was the first time in Red Wings history that they completed a 4-goal comeback to win the hockey game on the road. So the first time the Red Wings completed a 4-goal comeback on the road to win. That's incredible. And it was an incredible game. And I'm despite the shortcomings, which you have to acknowledge that first period it was an incredible hockey game. And the way they responded in the second, third period is definitely the more important feature. So when we come back, the Red Wings do play again today by the time you're listening to this, against the Buffalo Sabres. So I got to preview that. But what a game. What a win. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. So stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Again, I'm sick, guys, still recovering from illness, so give me a second while I get a cough out. If Scotty was here, he could have talked through that, and he would have pointed out that I was coughing, which would have been super handy, but Scotty's not here. The Red Wings play the Buffalo Sabres on the second half of a back-to-back because, God bless the NHL and their scheduling. So the Toronto Maple Leafs got fined $100,000 because they traveled on the day after Christmas, which is technically not allowed given the collective bargaining agreement. I'm going on a tangent. I recognize this, and I'm sorry, guys. But I don't blame the Toronto Maple Leafs for traveling on the 26th when they had a game in St. Louis on the 27th. Like, what is the NHL? We complain about the NHL scheduling all the time, but what is going through their minds where they're like, they left at like 10:30 on the 26th, 10:30 p.m. on the 26th. And they just ate it. They ate the fine because it's more important for the team to get to St. Louis at a reasonable time and get well rested for the game than have to leave at midnight or later to fly to St. Louis and have less rest and be less prepared for the game against St. Louis. I would have done the same thing if I was Toronto. If the Red Wings would have gotten fined for that, I would have been like, yeah, that makes sense. You want to be ready for the game. If you're going to make it mandatory that teams can't travel on the 26th, then don't give them games on the road that are hours away the next day. It just makes no sense. But anyways, I'm going off on a tangent. The Red Wings play the Buffalo Sabres. We're currently 5th in the Atlantic Division, right behind the Detroit Red Wings. This is a team that lost 8 in a row not that long ago. And honestly, last night I checked in on them, that is what I remember happening. But since then, they've been hot and cold. They've been hot and cold. They've been hot most recently. They're on a 4-game win streak, and their situation to the Red Wings coming into this game is very similar. Now, the Red Wings were losers of 6 before finally breaking that against the Tampa Bay Lightning, where the Buffalo Sabres were winners of 4. But they had 2 games postponed due to the same winter snowstorm that we here in Michigan experienced. It was more cold than it was snow. We didn't get nearly, at least on the east side of the state, southeast side of the state, we didn't get nearly as much snow as was predicted. I think we got like 3 inches, something like that. But the cold and the wind and the ice postponed 2 games, one against the Lightning, who the Red Wings had just beaten, and the Columbus Blue Jackets, they're Buffalo. So they're going to be in the same position. We are now in the position the Pittsburgh Penguins are in, and the Buffalo Sabres are now in the position the Red Wings are in. They had an extended period of time off. They're going to be well rested. The Red Wings are coming off a back-to-back. Now, unlike the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Red Wings won the game in an incredible fashion. And the Red Wings are historically, at least this season, I won't say historically, but this season, the Red Wings have been very good on back-to-backs, on the second half of back-to-backs. They tend to win those games. So, this is the makings of a very interesting matchup. And first thing I opened the show with, or one of the first things I opened the show with, was talking about momentum versus rest. And we're going to see tomorrow what is going to win out. Are we going to see the Buffalo Sabres team that's going to be well rested after more than a week off? Or are we going to see the Detroit Red Wings team that has won 2 straight games and won the night before and come in with the ball rolling? Is their fatigue going to catch up with them? Or is the Columbus Blue Jackets' legs going to be a little bit, got lead in them because of the fact that they've had time off? That's going to be the storyline of tomorrow. And one more thought, too, on the Pittsburgh Penguins game as well, is the Red Wings actually won a game in overtime. I think that's like the second game they've won in overtime this season, maybe third. They have like 7 overtime losses, which I think was at the time, last I had checked, like tied for league lead in overtime losses. So great that they they actually got a win in overtime. But back to the Buffalo Sabres. They're 3 points behind the Detroit Red Wings so far. Red Wings at 37 points, Buffalo Sabres at 34 points. And, they're not a team that you should underestimate. And I stand by that because they got some really good players on that team. They're a really young team that I think is going to be very good in the next couple of years. They're not quite there yet, but man, is their core exciting. And the great thing about their core, so the Red Wings have like kind of paced their core out. So you obviously have like the first group of the new core, which was Larkin and Bertuzzi. And those guys came up in like 16, 17, 18. And you brought in, after that, you have the next iteration of core. You had Filip Hronek. And everyone else after that is kind of gone. So I guess just Filip Hronek. And then after that, Lucas Raymond, Moritz Seider, then to come Simon Edvinsson. You had Soderblom this year, Joe Veleno last year. So, you've had a couple different, and that's how you normally want to do it, is you want your new core to be a mix of young guys and really young guys, I guess is the right way of saying it. Well, the Buffalo Sabres, they do have that, but they have a lot of really young guys. You know what? No, I take that back. I don't know if I can call that necessarily true because I keep having it in my head, and this is a fault on my part. I always think Rasmus Dahlin is super young, but he's not. He's been in the NHL for quite a few years already. So they do have that multiple iterations that the Red Wings have. They have Rasmus Dahlin. They have guys like Dylan Cousins. They have guys like Owen Power, obviously. They have a lot of young guys. And then, of course, they have Tage Thompson, who's in 32 games played, has already got 50 points on the season, 26 goals, 24 assists. I don't know, man. Last year was an explosive year for him. And when they signed him that big long-term contract in the offseason, I was like, I don't know if you want to do that for a guy who has had one good year and a bunch of, subpar years prior to that. But he has proved to be the real deal. And honestly, if you just get like 2 more really good years and he goes back to being whatever, I'd still say that's a win because, when you sign those types of contracts, you pay those players to be that player now. My big comparable is Miguel Cabrera of the Detroit Tigers. When you signed him to that long contract, you knew when he was approaching 40, he wasn't going to be hitting 40 home runs. You were paying him to hit 40 home runs in the present while you were trying to win. And the Buffalo Sabres are trying to build a winner right now. So you're paying Tage Thompson to be really good now and in the next few years. So if he continues this up, I don't care what the last 4 years of that contract looked like. it's going to be a win if he continues to play like this. It's incredible. Again, Rasmus Dahlin, 37 points in 31 games. He's just an incredible dynamic. You got Jeff Skinner, Alex Tuch. They're an exciting young team. And if you're, I always hesitate to say this about the Buffalo Sabres because they've had just abysmal attempts at rebuilding over the years, but they have really found themselves kind of almost, I don't want to say luckily, because obviously you intentionally draft Dahlin, you intentionally draft Owen Power, but trading away Jack Eichel felt like a net loss. Obviously things had soured between them, but Jack Eichel was a number 2 overall pick and very good. He needed that surgery. They wouldn't let him get it, and he's playing great with Vegas, but it felt like a loss. I mean, Alex Tuch came over and he's been great. And you got lucky that Tage Thompson turned into this superstar you wouldn't have realized. You traded away Ryan O'Reilly, who was presumptively part of that core at the time. Things have just kind of, I won't call it luck because that would be discounting what the general managers have done in this process, but things have really fallen into place for the Buffalo Sabres. I'd be really excited if I were a Buffalo Sabres fan. But I've kind of gone on a tangent here, not really talking about the game matchup itself. They in net, Greg Anderson at 42 years old has a .922 save percentage. He retired and then decided a week later he was going to unretire for one last ride. I think I said this last time we previewed the game against the Buffalo Sabres, but I joked that he was like the Tom Brady of the NHL just without the rings in that. And I don't mean to draw comparables to, the greatest football player of all time. 7 Super Bowl rings. But the fact that he is playing at this caliber at his age is the part I'm comparing to. 42 years old and a save percentage of .922 is absolutely incredible. I cannot wrap my head around the way this guy is playing hockey right now. Absolutely phenomenal. Obviously, the Red Wings got blown out by the Buffalo Sabres earlier in the season, 8-3, and then lost in the shootout to the Sabres most recently, 5-4. So the Red Wings have 2 more opportunities to break even on the season series. Tonight will be chance number 1, and then the second chance will be late in the season in April. So this is a team that you look at, the Red Wings should be able to beat. They should be able to beat the Buffalo Sabres without a doubt. But you haven't done it so far this year, and it's time to do it. The momentum's on your side. Yes, you're coming out and you're playing a game off a game last night, so you might be a little bit fatigued, but no excuses. You got to win hockey games. But Buffalo Sabres have the 9th best Corsi for percentage at even strength in the league, an expected goals for percentage of 48.96 at 5-on-5, so just slightly below that 50% marker. So they're a very good even strength hockey team. So yeah, you just gotta. The advice here, guys, is the same it's always been. I don't have some magic formula for how you're going to beat the Buffalo Sabres. The way you're going to beat the Buffalo Sabres is play a complete 60 minutes and don't shoot yourself in the foot. That's the brand of hockey the Red Wings are going to be winning with this year. Is don't shoot yourself in the foot and play a complete 60 minutes. There you have it. I got a coffee. So yeah, that about sums up my thoughts. Thanks for bearing with me on I'm sweating. I'm literally sweating right now. I've been sweating on and off all day, part of being sick and getting over being sick. But thanks for bearing with me on this post-flu. I tested negative for COVID twice. So post-flu, post-cold podcast as the Red Wings complete the overtime victory 5-4 over the Pittsburgh Penguins to win 2 in a row. Jake Walman does the gritty. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow. Scotty should be with me then. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.